and welcome back to my small little library. In today's video we're gonna talk about one of my favorite authors. He has really gotten to me over the last few years and I really enjoy his writing. So yeah, for the second installment of my Let's Talk About series, we're gonna talk about Neil Gaiman. He is really, I think, one of like those really diverse fantasy authors. Like he has quite a lot of different books. He has non-fiction, he has kids literature, young adult literature, graphic novels, books, illustrated stuff. Like he has like everything, just like the whole bandwidth of stuff. He has something there, so I think everybody can find something that they like about him. And yeah, so today I wanted to talk about him just because I think he makes sense in the series as the second author, because I have read quite a few of his books. Yeah, not nearly all of them, but I enjoy his writing and I enjoy his different writing. I also already read like a children's book from him, even though I don't have any children and I'm obviously not a child, but I really enjoyed that book. So yeah, let's talk about Neil Gaiman.
Because, she said, when you're scared, but you still do it anyways, that's brave. What I say is, a town isn't a town without a bookstore. It may call itself a town, but unless it's got a bookstore, it knows it's not fooling a soul. Nobody looks like what they really are on the inside. You don't, I don't. People are much more complicated than that. It's true of everybody. Growing up, I took so many cues from books. They taught me most of what I knew about, what people did, about how to behave. They were my leaders and my advisors. It is neither fair nor unfair, nobody owns. It simply is. It's like the people who believe they'll be happy if they go and live somewhere else, but who learn it doesn't work that way. Wherever you go, you take yourself with you.
Okay, let's start with a few facts about Neil's life. So he was born in Hampshire in the UK, and actually now he lives in the USA, near Minneapolis. But yeah, he is originally from the UK and he started there, obviously. And he has a really nice website. I'm gonna link it down below because a lot of the information I've gotten is from there, where he has like a biography on there and he talks a lot about the stuff he's achieved, which, like, fair enough, I would do that as well. But yeah, as a child, he really loved going to the library, and he kind of like credits the library with bringing him up as like a feral library child, and yeah, he loved spending his time there, and obviously kind of like that kind of like got him into writing stuff as well. I personally also loved the library when I was younger. So I can totally understand him being a lot in the library and enjoying his time there. So yeah, I'm totally on his page there. He actually got his start in writing as a journalist. And his first book he has ever written is a biography of Duran Duran. Yeah, that's kind of like the first thing he has ever published, which I think is quite interesting. He isn't the only one. I think a few authors actually like started and write in journalism. I mean, it makes sense. You already have a job where you're writing stuff, and going from biographies to fantasy, I don't think is that outlandish. So yeah, that is where he started. And one book by him that I haven't read yet, but I definitely want to read, is his book about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy called Don't Panic, the official Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy companion. And it is kind of like an explanation novel about the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I've read that completely, all 4 books that are there. I liked it. I didn't love it, but I liked it. Well, I loved the first one, the other ones I thought were fine. So yeah, I will definitely at some point in my life read that, but I haven't gotten to that yet, because it's a non-fiction book about a fiction book, obviously, so it isn't what I pick up normally, you know. But yeah, I'm kind of interested to that because it is obviously like a book written about like a cool book that has like his place in the pop culture, so yeah, I think it's really interesting that he's written one of those. Okay. So Neil Gaiman has obviously published a lot in his life as an author. He started in like 1888, I think, is the first time he published. So he has obviously been there for a long, long time. So I can't talk about everything, but I just want to like talk about like little bits and bobs here. Neil Gaiman has written a lot of comics, but I only want to talk about his most popular because that is the one I have read, or comics and graphic novels together. He published a few things with DC and Vertigo and some Batman, but also his own stuff. The first thing he ever published was Black Orchid. That is the one that started it when it comes to comics and graphic novels. And the second one, which is also the one that for me I have read personally and that I think is the most well known from him, mostly because of the Netflix adaptation at this time now, and that is the Sandman comics. I am absolutely in love with them. I own the complete collection. I will show you them in a minute. But what I want to say about those comics, what I think is really, really interesting, the Sandman comics were actually the first ever comics to receive a literature award in the year 1991. So I think that kind of like tells you a lot about how good these comics were. They paved the road for a lot of different comics to come afterwards. But yeah, they were the first to receive an award and I absolutely love them. I can totally understand why they received that award. And so let me show you the editions I own from the Sandman. They will be a little bit harder to show, but I actually own these really, really big collections, and there are actually 3 of them. I can't all hold them up simultaneously, but they all look like this. This is part 1, then you have part 2, which looks exactly like part 1, but with the 2 on the front, and part 3 is the same. But I want to show you these. These are really, really precious to me. I absolutely love these editions. I bought the first one myself and then my partner actually gifted me the other ones, but I found to be like an incredibly great gift because these are some really hefty editions. And also they are completely in color. I think these are just wonderful. Yeah. They look great. If you've watched the Netflix show, you have an idea about the story. But yeah, they are about the Sandman. He's one of the Endless. And he has like his family, which is like desire and death and all of these. And yeah, it is a really interesting story and I absolutely love it. I loved reading these. I have read them 2 times now, completely front to back, which like it doesn't take as long as you would think because they are comics and you read them kind of like quickly. I absolutely love the art in these. I have some wall art inspired by Death because I absolutely love her character. But yeah, the story is also really, really nice. We have like Constantine in here, which you probably know about through his films and stuff, and Lucifer, and all of those characters are in here. Yeah, if you've watched the show on Netflix, it is a really, really good adaptation. You can definitely see that Neil Gaiman worked with the showmakers on that show to make it like as good as it can be. So yeah, it's really nice to see how good these were done as a Netflix show. So yeah, big thumbs up there. Absolutely favorite of mine. I would definitely also read more of his comics, but I haven't gotten around to that yet because, as I said, Neil Gaiman published a lot of stuff, and so yeah, these are all of the Sandman stuff. I have read all of that with all of the extras in there, and yeah, I'm a really big fan. It's like a really dark fantasy series. It is really brutal at times, but why not, you know? The next book from him I want to talk about is one of his illustrated works, and that is Coraline. For me, my first getting to know the book was actually through the movie. Because of the stop motion movie, I absolutely loved that movie, and I didn't know that it was a novel in the beginning, and then I searched more about it and actually found out that it is a Neil Gaiman novel, and that is the book that kindled my love for Neil Gaiman actually, because that is the first one I actually bought and read. And yeah, I have the illustrated edition. which has like these really nice drawings by Chris Riddle in them. I absolutely love his illustrations. Big fan. I'm a big fan of his work as well. But yeah, if you don't know the story, we have Coraline, who is like a little girl and her parents moved with her, and she's pretty much alone as a child with like only older people living in this old house. And she goes on adventures and kind of like her parents kind of ignore her because they have so much on their plate. And at some point she meets a woman that tells her that she's her other mother, and she will pretty much make sure all of her dreams come true. And there the horror starts. I do think that it is supposed to be a children's book. It is a really creepy book. Though I do think it is a great story. But yeah, it is an incredibly creepy story, and I absolutely love the film. If you are a film person and you haven't seen Coraline yet, go watch it. It is one of the best films out there, in my opinion. I'm such a big fan. I've watched that movie so many times. But yeah, that is the reason I'm also a big fan of the book, because yeah, there are kind of small differences. But in the end, the story comes out to the same ending, and yeah, really big fan. And actually, what I think was quite interesting is that Coraline actually won Neil Gaiman a whole lot of awards. Throughout his writing career, he has won a lot of awards, but Coraline alone got him the Hugo Award, the Nebula Award, the Bram Stoker Award, and the British Science Fiction Award. Only for this novel alone. So you can maybe think about how good the novel is if you haven't read it yet. But yeah, it is a really outstanding novel. It isn't too long. The illustrations are really nice. So yeah, if you want to like kind of get into horror, but like more like children-friendly horror, even though it is horror, I would definitely think Coraline is a good way to start. And it is definitely one of my favorite books from Neil Gaiman. Absolutely. The actual first book I've read from Gaiman was Good Omens. I don't usually, but I did fall in love with Neil Gaiman through this book, which is why I always say Coraline is the one that got me into it. But I was already kind of familiar with Terry Pratchett, and Neil Gaiman actually wrote Good Omens together with Terry Pratchett, and that is also a series. One which I also absolutely loved. So yeah, if you haven't watched the Good Omens series, do that. But yeah, this is pretty much a world-ending novel. You have you have an angel and a demon, and those two band together, and each one of them has to try to get the Antichrist to do the right thing for their faction. And yeah, they kind of become friends, and the story goes from there. So yeah, this is a story about the Antichrist. We have witches in here, and prophecies, and an angel and a demon that are really cool and funny guys. So yeah, absolutely love this book as well. But yeah, it is together with Terry Pratchett. So you have the humor of both of the authors in here. Yeah, I wouldn't say this is a good introduction to Neil Gaiman, because obviously there are parts in there that burn from him, and you can see that definitely. So yeah, but if you are a Terry Pratchett fan and a Neil Gaiman fan, you most likely have read this already. But if not, I think this is a good, humorful novel. It is a lot of fun, this is like a really fun book about the world ending, which, to be honest, if you talk about the world ending, why not make it fun? So yeah, quick detour to that. I'm gonna go a little bit in the chronological order here from the books I own, because, to be honest, I can only talk about those. So yeah, the next one that chronologically came out is Neverwhere. This is also a fantasy novel. Well, all of these are fantasy novels. This is Neverwhere. There's supposed to be a second part that should come out at some point. It is already on Goodreads, but yeah, for now, this is the first part that stands. This really, we have our main character who kind of stumbles into like this fantasy world he didn't know was there, and then he kind of goes on a journey. Yeah, a little bit to find himself, but also because there's a fantasy world, and he kind of like gets mixed up in some events, and yeah, they take him with them, and yeah, he helps a girl actually that is wounded, and he kind of helps her get going again, and she comes from the magical side of society, and yeah, so through her he kind of like gets to know the magical side, and yeah, once you know that it is there, you can't look back, and you go on adventures. I think this is a really fun book. My edition also comes with some illustrations, so my version also comes with some illustrations. So this one, for example, this is also illustrated by Chris Riddle. Really big fan of his illustrations, so I'm really happy about that. But yeah, a different of his fantasy books. This one came out in 1996, so actually part 2 is like 30 years later, if we're honest, but yeah. The next book by him that I own, that came out directly after Neverwhere, is Stardust. Stardust is actually kind of a fairy tale story. We have pretty much our young main character, Tristan, and he wants to like impress the girl he likes and wants to get some, like a star that fell from the sky for her. And he has to go through the barrier for that, and he kind of finds out that behind the barrier is their live fairies, and obviously an adventure ensues. This one isn't one of my favorites from him, I think mostly because it is kind of like written like a fairy tale, and I wasn't the most impressed with that. I'm not the biggest fan of fairy tales, like I like them, but I think they're too overdone for me at this point, so yeah. I liked it, but I didn't love it. So this is, in my opinion, like one of the weakest books I've read from him. But yeah, this edition is really, really nice. But nothing special in my opinion. After that, we have another book that was actually done into a TV show, though I haven't watched that one because I personally am of the opinion that I won't enjoy the book as a TV show. I absolutely love the book, but I don't think that I would enjoy it in like a TV show format, so I didn't watch it. But that is American Gods, and together with that also Anansi Boys. Because this one actually plays after this one, and this is pretty much like a book about the sons of a character that is in here. But yeah, American Gods is a story about gods living in America and struggling with people believing in them, and if people stop believing in them, they kind of vanish, and so they try to make people believe in them again. And our main character actually gets released from prison, and by chance he meets one of the gods on the plane, and he kind of becomes his bodyguard and like henchman to do what the god wants to do as a job. And yeah, from there the story goes. It really is all over. We meet a lot of gods, we meet a lot of different like fantasy creatures, but it is set in like a normal world. So that was really, really interesting. I really like this book, and I think if you're interested in TV shows which like are a lot more like brutal and stuff, because the story is actually kind of like more like action-y, even though it is a fantasy story, but I think the TV show is more like an action show, which isn't my preference, to be honest. But yeah, really, really good book, really good show. And then this one I also liked, Anansi Boys, not as much as American Gods, but I think that's always gonna be hard to like top the first novel in like a series, so yeah. But big fan of both of these. Also, I really like the editions I own. I don't know, I'm a big fan of mass market paperbacks, and I love these like, I don't know, more like older inspired covers. American Gods was published in 2001, and Anansi Boys was published in 2005. Definitely would recommend reading those. Then he published like cooperation with another author, Interworld. I haven't read that, so I can't tell you much about that. But then we come to one of my absolute favorites from him, which is The Graveyard Boy. This is also an illustrated edition, but not with Chris Riddle. But yeah, here we have like a little boy who, his parents get murdered, and he stumbles out of the house. He is like barely able to walk at that age, and yeah, he doesn't know where to go, and so he finds himself in a graveyard, and the ghosts kind of like take over, bringing him up. And yeah, the main part of the book is when the boy is like 9, 10, that age around, and he starts to kind of like more actively take part in his life, and there's somebody that tries to end his life. And then the adventure begins, because pretty much everyone tries to like be there for him and help him, and there's a lot of adventure in here. I really love this book. I think the story about like our main character gets the name Nobody Owens because he doesn't know who he is, because he can't remember anything other than that he walked the graveyard and there he is now. But yeah, I really love the setting of like the boy being like bound to the graveyard through the ghosts, and the ghosts kind of trying to bring him up and do the best that they can with raising a human child. So yeah, I'm a really big fan of the story, and I found out on his website that this actually is getting a movie version. So I'm looking forward to that. I will definitely watch that. Big fan. This is such a nice book. Yeah, let me see. I'm also like such a big fan of illustrations like these that kind of like frame the text in the book. So yeah, and that is one thing I have to say. All of the editions of Neil Gaiman's books I own, I really like. The Graveyard Boy was published in 2008. Just to give like a rough timeline. Then the next book that I own from him was published in 2013. This one I'm also a big fan of. It's called The Ocean at the End of the Lane. This is a 4-star book. As is Neverwhere, American Gods and Graveyard Book are 5 stars. But yeah, I really love this edition. It's such a pretty bound copy of it. And yeah, here we have pretty much our main character who is like an adult at the beginning of the story, and he drives home for a funeral and pretty much goes down memory lane, and his life wasn't the best as a child. He had a really bad stepmother, and his father kind of like wasn't really there for him, and because of that he kind of like wandered a lot, and he found a girl, and through the girl he found magic and an escape. And so that is what the book is about. He kind of reminisces about his life back then, and he, as an adult, tries to go back to the places he remembers and kind of like get his life together, like somehow be okay with what happened to him as a child and remembering what happened to him. And yeah, this book is about a story, and I absolutely love it. It isn't as good as some of his others, but it's also kind of a really dark story, which the book definitely shows you that it is a dark book. And yeah, I love stories like these that are like a fantasy but are rooted in real life and kind of want to tell you a story about important things. And yeah, we all can get through those, and this book tells you that. The next one I have that is from the list I'm following is Norse Mythology. Yeah, this one obviously isn't like a fantasy story. It is a book about Norse mythology, and there are a few different stories about different gods in here. It isn't like obviously complete, it's way too small for that, but I think it's a really interesting retelling of the stories. I don't know how accurate the stories are portrayed in here, but I think they are fairly good. I have read a book from another author that was also about Norse mythology, and there were definitely the same stories in there. So yeah, if you are interested in like a little bit of mythology, this one definitely take a look. It is quite interesting. I think it's also quite like a different thing. As I said in the beginning, Neil Gaiman really ventured into different directions with his books. So yeah, you have something like Norse mythology, but you also have something like American Gods, and then you have something like Neverwhere, which like is completely rooted in fantasy and not like American Gods and Norse mythology on like actual mythology from our world, you know. Now we're coming to like more of the miscellaneous books that I have from him still. The first one is still a fantasy book, but in like a kind of a different format, and that is The Sleeper and the Spindle. This is also a fairy tale retelling. This one I think is like my worst rated by Neil Gaiman, simply because it is so thin. The story is so short, but it is kind of like an alternative telling of Sleeping Beauty. So yeah, I liked the alternative Sleeping Beauty version, but I think it's just too short. I don't enjoy books that are so short. But yeah, I really like the edition that I have, because you have like these transparent overlay, and beneath that you have like a picture of our Sleeping Beauty, which is kind of nice. Yeah, what this story kind of does different is that in the story we don't wait for the prince to rescue our princess. We are more like hoping the queen does the job. But yeah, it is like a dark twist on Sleeping Beauty, even though Sleeping Beauty already is kind of a dark tale. But yeah, this one twists the story a little bit, gives it like a new spin. But yeah, I think I would have wished it would have been a little bit longer to like go into the detail a little bit more, you know? But the book is really pretty. There are a lot of like complete illustrations, which is why the book is so even shorter than it seemed, because the text is like this, and then you always have like illustrations on the side. But yeah, it is incredibly pretty to look at. Then we have two of his short story collections. One is M is for Magic, which are just like magic short stories. I really enjoyed these. I'm always down for like a fantasy short story. The one I love the most in here is called October in the Chair, which are like the month all sitting together and telling stories. I thought that was a really great idea for like visualizing the month of the year and the seasons with that. So yeah, absolutely a fan of that. A really great short story collection for fantasy lovers. Pick it up if you like short stories. And then the second one I own is Fragile Things. The only sad part is that there are some stories in both of these that are the same, which I thought is kind of like sad if you release those, but I do think they are quite a few years apart, so yeah. But for example, October in the Chair is also in this one. But yeah, there's also some short stories connected with Neverwhere in here, so if you like Neverwhere, this one is definitely the right short story collection to pick up. But yeah, this is also full of fantasy short stories. I'm a big fan. I think Neil Gaiman can do the short story format really nice. I just think fairy tales maybe aren't his best thing to do. But that's just my opinion. One thing I'm also a really big fan about, and I just bought this book kind of as a joke, but it is really a favorite for me. It's called Fortunately the Milk. It is also illustrated by Chris Riddle. Let me see if I can show you. It's really reflective. Yeah, it's a children's book with like a lot of illustrations, really little text. Yeah, pretty much we have our father who forgot the milk, and by getting the milk kind of is forced on an adventure. But yeah, fortunately he has a will with him, and he ends up back home at the end. But I think it's a really fun book. I think Neil Gaiman is a really good author for fantasy and for children's fantasy as well. I thought this was absolutely hilarious. Some of my friends are starting to get children now, and this is definitely something I would give them for the children once they're at the age where they can kind of like appreciate this book. But yeah, really big fan, and you can kind of see that he has children and that he obviously knows what children kind of want to read. So I will definitely pick more of his children's books up in the future, because why not? I can enjoy reading a children's book just like as like a really fun in between, a book that doesn't take itself too seriously, because obviously why would it if it is for children? So yeah, I'm a big fan of the children's books as well. Yeah. So this is like a small window into his works. He has written a lot more books, but yeah, I think I have read like kind of like a little window into his things, and I've read his popular works because that is the ones that you see the most, which is why I picked them up at some point, because I started with Coraline, and then I saw American Gods out there, I saw Neverwhere, The Graveyard Boy, you know. These are all of the more popular things, but there's a lot more out there. And I will definitely collect a lot more of his works and start reading more of his works. But yeah, for me, these are the ones that you can definitely easily get into Neil Gaiman, and trust me, you will like it. I think he has a really, really great writing style. Also, it differs a lot from book to book. Like, he really kind of like stays with the mood of the book, and yeah, I really love him for that. He can write really, really sad stories. You know, I was so sad when The Graveyard Boy was over, because it is like such a sad but also such a happy book, you know. There are so many emotions in there. So yeah. And for example, with American Gods, there's a lot less emotion and a lot more action. But I still loved it, you know. So I think he's very versatile with his writing. And yeah, I just wanted to give you like a little bit of a look into what he has written. Also, you can get some of his books in like different editions. For example, Coraline is also out there as a graphic novel. I am thinking about picking that up. But yeah, there are different editions for the books out there. He has written a lot of comics and graphic novels if you're more into that. But yeah, he has also written a lot of books, a few children's books, a few non-fiction books if you like bibliographies. I obviously haven't read any of those because I'm not the biggest non-fiction reader, but these are also out there. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this little like look into Neil Gaiman, and yeah, leave me a comment down below how you liked the video, which books of Neil Gaiman have you already read, maybe which ones should I pick up next because you really, really like them. And yeah, please leave a like, subscribe if you want to get more content like this, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye!